There's too many games. Man, what a bittersweet year to be a gamer, am I right, fellas? Half the industry is on fire trying to raise the next generation of compulsive baby gamblers. Certain folks have started to realize that, hey, maybe 10-month dev cycles aren't a good idea. And now, suddenly, everyone is really passionate about how authoritarian governments can use their massive market influence to control companies to make basic democratic values not a thing. But despite all the heaping trash, 2019 was a great year for games. We were absolutely spoiled for choice, y'all. And hey, it's been a hot minute since the gaming industry has had a market crash, and with these numbers and this pie chart, looks like we could be getting close to another one, so get hype, y'all. But seriously, it's my job to play games, and I haven't been able to keep up with half the stuff that came out, but I have played through most of the big ones on my radar, and now that I've had some time to stew in my thoughts a bit, please enjoy this big old yelling about blowout. Part 1, because Part 2 is coming later. But you know what's coming right now? Yep, this video is sponsored by myself. Yeah, don't download anything. Just click the link down below to check out the merch shop for shirts and stickers. Go ahead and treat yourself with these fresh bread looks, if you will. Alright? Shill. Please buy my stuff. Okay, we're moving on. Now, allow me to give you my thoughts, feelings, and frustrations with all of these lovely 2019 titles. And a heads up, even if I poke fun at these games, let me just say now that they all get huge bun seals of approval. All of these titles are totally worth checking out, and I will be talking about them again in the future. But for now, feelings. Let's go!
Hello? Anybody here?
Warning! The following video was rated M for...
Hello?
If you're young, you shouldn't watch this, so viewer discretion is advised. But hey, I won't tell if you won't. So the year started off with a spooky bang with the Resident Evil 2 remake, the game that showed what a remake should be. Is what everybody else has said, and I'ma say too, cause it's true. I never played the original because I was baby, but from just watching Let's Plays, it is so obviously faithful, and Capcom has done an amazing job repackaging that survivor horror nostalgia with modern design and graphics. Can't say anything in this game is particularly groundbreaking though, since it is taking a concept from 20 years ago, but it's a focus experience that will make any fan of Resident Evil or horror cry happy tears of fear. Now, I would describe myself as a casual Resident Evil fan since I've only played 4 and 7, but 2 is now an all-time favorite. It rides that sweet line of just being tense and freaky enough to keep you on your toes, but not being too scary to the point I insta-quit at the slightest jump scare. Hey, baby. Now, a thing to note is that this isn't the hunkiest game, with an average playtime being around 4 to 7 hours. Personally, I like my scary games to be on the shorter side, since clenching my butt cheeks for too long makes me tired, but with 2 character scenarios to play through, new game pluses, and a plethora of extras to unlock, the game will essentially seduce you into multiple playthroughs until you have every inch of those pants memorized. This is a full package kind of title, impressive and thoughtful in every department with replay value while being true to its genre and the original. It is what we in the game critics community like to call good. Deserves all the praise it's been getting, so great job, Capcom snap. So that's my general verdict, but let's nosedive into those details. Now, the story takes place not long after the first Resident Evil, where the T-virus has made its way to Raccoon City and everyone's getting down with the sickness. You can pick as either babyface Leon Kennedy or fed-up college student Claire Redfield. While each character's playthroughs are relatively the same, the plot does progress a bit differently because of the character interactions, along with some segments totally unique to their story. So think like 70% the same, 30% different, capiche? Either way, both playthroughs stand on their own, and it doesn't matter who you pick first cause you'll want to play through both anyway. Now, the gist is, Claire is looking for her brother, who is believed to be at the Raccoon City police station, and as for Leon, it's his first day on the job as a cop and he's too anxious to call in sick, so off they go to investigate the police station in hopes of finding survivors. And then they do, and everyone lives happily ever after. Okay, but seriously, you end up battling your way through zombies, jacked up T-virus monsters, and poo-poo pee-pee until you confront the Umbrella goons responsible for the outbreak. Can definitely say this thing is not winning any Oscars, cause Resident Evil plots have never been known to be that deep or moving, but what plot there is engaging. The story beats are very reminiscent of a B-rated horror movie, but the cast carries it all the way to the end since everyone has some kind of motivation and are expressive with distinct personalities. Leon is like a little Boy Scout trying his absolute best, and Claire is a gay aunt. It's great. Love that for them. There is some campiness to this whole situation for sure, but rarely does it break the tension. The scary stuff is scary and the drama is dramatic, with a nice satisfying ending to send it off into the sunset for the next T-virus disaster. But who cares about the plot? You've seen Resident Evil Apocalypse. It's like that, but not really. Moving on to the real meat of this thing, though, is the gameplay. Look, Resident Evil is literally what started the survivor horror genre, and even though the series has taken some wide turns throughout its lineage, Resident Evil 2 truly is survivor horror, because there's a lot of survivorin' and horrorin'. While you'll be going through a few locations, you'll be spending the first half of the game in the city's police station, which used to be a museum. And I'm telling you this because the building's layout is absolute whack. The levels, if you will, are pretty open-ended, allowing you to roam around freely, but in order to progress through the story, you gotta find key items to navigate the areas without getting your neck snacked on. Finding the key items is like a puzzle of process, trying to find one item to get to another item to unlock that door that holds that crank to unlock that jewel to get to the sewers. Trust me, this does make sense. But the point is, the game rewards exploration and smart routing, with tons of little aha moments when you finally figure out the solutions. But what's cool about this kind of design is by simply switching up the item placement, you get a fresh experience, which makes second playthroughs and harder difficulties more interesting. Now, you can definitely see how Resident Evil 7's gameplay influenced a lot of RE2's mechanics, with the camera angle really being the biggest difference. But the combat is still basic point-and-click shooting with tanky shuffle jogging when stuff gets real. So normally in horror games, guns tend to reduce the fear factor a bit since they give you a false sense of security, but because the ammo is so sparse and you can only carry so much with you at a time, it makes wasting ammo stressful, and the zombies ain't no pushovers. Okay, well sometimes they are, but you can unload like 10 bullets into a dude's head and they still might get up. So even though the gunplay is very simple and the movement controls are slow and heavy, it's effective because it gets you into the survivor mindset where you'll often organically get yourself in these tense panic situations, like when it's dark and you just wasted your last shot and the liquor is coming right for my cheeks and we're panicking! While the game does have its scripted moments, there is plenty of RNG elements that will keep you on your toes no matter what. But if you explore thoroughly and take the time to return to areas with the right items, you can upgrade your weapons, equipment load, and find treasures that makes enemy encounters easier. It all feels very intuitive and rewarding. And tiny things that go a long way is the map colors that indicate if there is still stuff to find in a room. I love this feature, and every game with a map like this should be doing this, and if they don't, they're grounded. But if there is one thing about this game, it's my boy, Mr. X.
Oh, finally you're here, bitch. You got $1?
Jesus Christ!
I see it right there. Give me your $1.
Okay, so this guy's entire MO is to kick your ass. Once you come across him in the first half of the game, he'll be up in your business chasing you around, making puzzle solving way tougher since the guy insists you go on your union break all the time. Obviously, I'm not the first person to point out that Mr. X's whole getup is comedically dated. Homeboy be teetering on fedora clown territory, good god. Like, yeah, he is kind of intimidating with the cinder block footsteps while hiding, and I'm sure this design really pooped some pants back in 1998, but even with the RE engine's blessing, this guy looks like a roll of Charmin left in a puddle of paste with a hat. So he's not so much scary as he is annoying, since he can't be killed, and running around trying to shake him off your trail makes me tired, and I got to do! Luckily, he is pretty manageable if you're cautious, and having him around cranks up the pressure for sure, but I can't say I'm fond of the guy.
You're lying. Let me see. Open your purse.
Now, I've never been one to be a graphics snob. If technical performance isn't hindered and the art style serves the game well, then I got nothing to complain about. But can I just highlight just how great this game looks? Like, goddamn, characters' faces are beyond detailed, and you can get lost in those pores. The zombies are juicy, and the environment's realism just sucks you right in. The RE engine utilizes photo scanning technology to achieve the realness, and it just looks so real. I mean, it's really pretty too, and it just makes the spooks hit even harder because, hey, that kind of looks like a hallway I've seen before. The sound design is also commendable. One of the most effective ways to freak people out is to get up in their ear holes after all. Like, yeah, this JPEG of a bread seems harmless now, but you add some eerie tunes in the background and you don't know what's gonna happen next. Resident Evil 2 just understands the subtlety of sound. So the zombie grunts, doors opening, meaty gore, and even the player's footsteps are all convincing and add to the ambiance. And the mixing elevates all these to the point you can even sense the proximity of distant sounds. What can I say, y'all? Resident Evil 2 is one of the most coherent titles I've played in a while. I just didn't see any major issues worth getting bent out of shape over, so if you like horror in any capacity or just think this looks neat, then please give it a shot. And even if the Game Awards don't love you, Resident Evil 2...
And the Game Award goes to Call of Duty Modern Warfare.
At least I do. Alrighty, I'm done praising Capcom's little remake, so let's move on to praising Capcom's little sequel, cause man, DMC5 is really good too. Now talk about an epic gamer moment, cause I've played every single Devil May Cry title, but I've never beaten a single one. Yeah, I'm a casual DMC fan, the worst kind if you will. I know the plot, I love the characters, the gameplay, the looks, the sounds, big fan claps all around. It's all great. Yeah, but I've glided right under that line of max DMC appreciation because my skills are just bad enough to struggle, I don't really care about point ratings or trophies, and I am far from a completionist. So needless to say, Devil May Cry's whole combat reward system ricochets off my dense brain like a Nerf ball, so I've never been able to sit through and beat one for one minor inconvenient reason or another. Gotten close, but I've never triggered the credits myself. Until this one. Yes, Devil May Cry 5 is all that in a bag of chips. Easily one of the best DMC games and one of the better action games I've played purely because of its combat system, and well, mostly everything else. Of course, 5 didn't really reinvent the wheel, it just stayed true to the series' identity while fine-tuning the mechanics and throwing in some fresh rogue elements. So it's not so much bold or revolutionary as it is the thing people wanted from a new DMC game. You see, it's been a hot minute since the series has had a real entry, and very rarely do series with large gaps between sequels actually meet fan expectations. And while I can't say I've been dying of thirst like these other guys, the consensus is that, yeah, this game was totally worth the wait. Again, great job, Capcom. People don't hate you when you put out good quality games. Who would have guessed? Now, big scary numbers at the end of the title always bring up that do I need to know the previous game's question, so let's get that out of the way now. Yes, DMC5's plot does require knowing the previous plots of the series, but if you can tolerate some light reading, then you're all good. DMC plots are always a paragraph long because most of the stories are character-focused, so if you know the characters, their motivations, and that demons go ham in this modern world, then you can follow along just fine. Now, a thing to note about the DMC5 story, though, is that it is told in a non-linear fashion to enhance some of the reveals, so be mindful of the dates and times cause the plot can feel a bit jumpy. But to give you an overview, the game takes place a few years after the events of DMC4. Things start rolling when Nero gets his demon arm yanked off by some gross dude, and Dante gets asked by a mysterious 2-day-old deodorant-loving emo hippie to take out a powerful demon gearing up to attack the city. And wouldn't you know it? Oh no, the city is being overrun by these big bug monsters and their tower nests. Wonder what that's all about. So the plot really begins when Dante and Nero fight the Demon King. Stuff gets dicey fast since Nero was working with a nub, and when Dante tells him to go sit at the kids' table, he gets really heated and then immediately yeeted from the tower. He then comes back a month later with a new robot arm and a mechanic named Nico, whom I love very much, so he can help Dante kick John Demon Lord's behind and call it a day. Obviously, I'm leaving out some details, but I don't want to ruin the surprises because when it comes to fanfare, this story is full of satisfying moments, especially near the end. But more important than the emotional impact is the personality. Michael Jackson references, physics-defying trucks, motorcycle swords, rocket arms, smirking, and in fact, DMC5's plot just ends up being the Sparta family drama of the month mixed in with parasitic demons coming out the nether plane. But you're here for the characters, seeing all their snarky quips and badass moments with a small violin playing in the background when stuff gets raw. DMC5 just understands what makes these characters fun and prioritizes those moments above all else. Nero has upgraded from scene kid to Chad adjacent, where he's still a little bit of an emotional hothead, but he's more sassy and looks like he's having a good time. And when he's having a good time, time, I'm having a good time. We're having a good time. Anyway, it wouldn't be a DMC title without everyone's favorite sexy Uncle Dante. You get this jaded old man vibe just going through the motions and showing a few signs of slowing down, but he's still the same old Dante. He taunts anything with a face, rarely looks like he's trying, and showboats his new weapons for the camera every time. And then there's V, a new character whose origin is shrouded in mystery or whatever. The whole point of this guy was to be different from Nero and Dante to give the cast some balance, so he's here on the other end of the cool spectrum. He's chiller and quieter, but is a team player that can roll with the punches in his own ambiguous way. He's definitely the wild card of the bunch, but he fits right in because, my god, that style, that hair, them sandals. And I gotta give some spotlight to my girl, Nico. I never knew I had a soft spot in my heart for trailer trash mechanics, but here we are. Nico just ends up being the comedic relief who's really jazzed about robot arms and watching demons die, but what more do you need? Best parts of the game are just watching her geek out and driving her van in places vans shouldn't be able to go. She's cute, she's tough, she's funny, she's got tood.
Ew. You like flirting with me?
She's the whole damn microwave meal, and that's that on that. Also, yeah, how could I forget? Lady and Trish are also back, and they are still very much cooler than you. Okay, moving on. So don't fix what ain't broke. The game is divided up into chapter levels again, where you just fight your way forward and progress the story. Previous games have had different variations of this, occasionally filling levels with platforming, puzzles, or requiring an item to progress. But DMC5 has definitely streamlined the level design by barely having any of that. The game starts off with some diverse areas, from city streets to abandoned structures, occasionally having some obstacle to navigate, but once you get into the demon nest, it just turns into battle rooms separated by janky hallways, and it gets really samey really fast. Can't say past games' obstacles are really missed though, since they felt like variety gimmicks half of the time. The real fun of DMC has always been the combat, so the fact that the game is just battle rooms back to back is low-key kind of a perk, if anything, but the lack of level eye candy in the demon nest does make the last third of this game completely blur together until the very end. So the level design gets a big fat functional from me. Take that as you will. But what helps balance out the lack of variety, though, is the fact that you get to play as the whole bad boy crew. So you'll switch characters depending on the story chapter, and while you'll just be going from point A to B no matter what, each character has unique gameplay to spice things up. And jumping into the combat, the dev team kept the golden rule in mind when making this title. It's all about looking cool. Easiest observation of my lifetime, oh my god. This game's combat is outstanding. As mentioned before, DMC5 took the mechanics in past games and tweaked them to make the most fluid, most over-the-top, most combo-filled gameplay the series has ever seen. There is an abundance of nuance when it comes to the timing and input of the combat. I mean, making insane DMC combo videos is like a whole subsection of YouTube at this point, and even though I could never pull off some of these myself, the fact that someone else can, and the game encourages it, means it's Arctic levels of deep. So Nero once again uses the Red Queen as his primary weapon, but with his slingshot arm, gun, and an array of devil breakers to choose from, you can seamlessly string together combos without even touching the ground, and he fights with a noticeable aggression that really amps up his hits. Devil breakers are truly the highlight of Nero's gameplay though, since they all have special moves and are incredibly satisfying to use. But the catch is, their uses are limited until replenished, so you gotta use them wisely. I know some folks aren't a huge fan of the fact that you have to constantly restock the Devil Breakers and you can't cycle through your loadout without destroying them, and it's a mood sometimes, I feel it, but I'm pretty sure they went with this system to balance out Nero's combat better. They wanted the breakers to be useful, but didn't want to risk folks using them as a crutch, so limited uses and going with what you got, here we are. Now, Dante starts off with his rebellion, but eventually you'll get a plethora of weapons along with his iconic attack styles that you can switch on the fly, meaning the combo potential is literally endless with him. You can smack a dude with ice nunchucks, punch him in the face with fire-infused brass knuckles, and then run him over with a motorcycle, all in one swoop. It's really, 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 really cool. I cannot state that enough. Dante's customization options and movesets can make you feel a bit overwhelmed at times, but the style point system naturally encourages you to experiment and switch weapons constantly, since getting S ranks feels just as good as the controls themselves, especially since you can remap all of them in the settings. Party hard, boys! And keeping with that wildcard theme is V's combat.
So it is written.
So his gameplay is definitely different, but once you get used to him, you slip right into that emo groove. Since V's on the shrimpier side, he uses his demon familiars to do the fighting for him. So battles normally have V walking around while you control your boys from a distance. The only thing V can do is jump, deliver the killing blow, and read poetry. Yes, there's a designated read poetry button, which eventually fills up a meter where you can summon Nightmare, and yeah, now it's a party! Now, even though I enjoy playing as V, he does have the most shallow mechanics out of the three since you only have so much control over your familiars, and I can totally see why people would find his chapter sluggish in comparison, but I also appreciate how different his combat is, just for the sake of mixing it up. V ain't no home run, but I do want him on my team, if you know what I mean. But the combat wouldn't be fun if all you ever fought was cardboard cutouts, and fear not, DMC5's got those demons covered, since new enemies and bosses are introduced at a consistent rate. The enemies all have noticeably different attack patterns in range and difficulty, so fights feel fresh while being easy to adapt to due to the well-telegraphed animations. Granted, sometimes things can get really chaotic on screen when there are multiple dudes, especially when the room gets cramped and the camera gets stuck on the walls, so trying to get out unscathed can be tough, and a handful of enemies got some really annoying quirks that I just do not like. But regardless, everything feels manageable. In fact, the whole game just feels easier compared to previous entries. Noted the series has always had a bunch of difficulty settings, but the style point system seems more generous, and I think I died like 3 times on normal, which is saying something, cause you don't get healing items. Now you can pick up healing orbs on the battlefield, but instead of holding on to healing items, if your health reaches 0, then you have an option to revive with gold or red orbs. At first glance, I thought this was a very weird thing to change, but the game does have a lot of supposed to lose fights, so I'm guessing they went with this to prevent players from constantly wasting healing items on fights they aren't supposed to win. Big thunk. But it doesn't really make much of a difference though. The game ain't that hard unless you want it to be. And another thing I thought was a head scratcher is the online mechanics. So keep in mind, this is a single player experience, but the game does let you know who else is playing through the same chapter, and in some chapters, the characters' paths overlap. So if you're playing V and you see Nero off in the distance killing something, that's probably another player. But no touching. Yeah, features don't get more passive than this. You can't interact with other players at all, and it has no effect on the game world whatsoever. You just get to know if other people are playing the game. Not really sure why they included this, but it's honestly whatever. Catch me outside in the demon nest sometimes, boys. That's me. But what makes that gameplay all the sweeter, though, is that replay value. The main story is about 10 to 15 hours, but with S ranks to chase after, higher difficulties, unlockables, and battle challenges like the Bloody Palace, you could spend well over 100 hours mastering this title. But do you know what good games have? Theme songs. Most of the OST is instrumentals that help elevate whatever is going on, but it's the main characters' themes that hit different. Devil Trigger, Subhuman, Crimson Cloud, iconic songs of a generation right here. Meme that. I mean, I might be a tad biased considering my upbringing though, but each character's theme is a different subgenre of rock and metalcore, which helps them stick out from one another and complements each character's fight styles. And oh yeah, they went with that dynamic mixing that I love so very much, cause the track volume is linked to the style meter, meaning you can literally hear how stylish you are in combat, and you want to keep those combos up since the tunes slap. And time to be so obvious it hurts, this game is absolutely hot, hot, hot. Oh, Lord!
I'll be gentle.
Everyone is pretty, everything got detail, and this aesthetic is slick. So, as stated before, the RE engine excels in photorealism, but a lot of the stuff in this game is not realistic. The animations alone are next level of inhuman movement, but Capcom did an amazing job modernizing these characters and making them look natural no matter what. The general art direction has such a distinct look to it too. Color schemes on point, Devil Hunters on brand. The heavy metal font with these menus is mwah! Sexy. Although, the cost of beauty is steep, because if there is one gripe with this game, it's the loading screens. The performance during missions is mostly flawless, and you rarely get any loading in between areas, but the menus specifically have a loading screen in between like every other input. My guess is because there are character models chilling out in the background for each menu, the loading screens are there to help mask the scene transitions, but it makes menuing really slow to say the least, and you're gonna be in there a lot sometimes. But it's a small issue within an otherwise great game. The energy this title gives off is almost rejuvenating, so even if you don't know anything about DMC, if you like combat that will actually make you feel cool, then rev up those fryers and go crazy, go stupid.
How's that for road rash?
Only the smoothest of transitions here at SuperButterBuns TV, guys. Yeah. Anyway, now it's no secret that I'm a big From Software fanatic. Got hooked in with Dark Souls 1 and I've played every Miyazaki title since. So when Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice came out, I was ecstatic to play it, but I was also extra critical of my experience. It took me about 3 full playthroughs to figure out if I really liked this game. And then I realized I bothered to do 3 full playthroughs, so that kind of answered my internal debacle. But why was I debacling to begin with? So personally, I view Sekiro as From Software's around game, with the director stating they wanted to make something different while still having Souls-like qualities that folks know them for. So, taking some inspiration from the company's early past, the goal was to just make a cool ninja game and see what happens. Now, I admire this title because it shows FromSoft is willing to broaden their horizons a bit and evolve past traditional Souls design, along with not being afraid to axe popular mechanics if it makes for a more focused experience. However, because Sekiro has a lot of new bells and whistles, the game feels messier and not as mechanically polished compared to past games, and this title specifically shines a blaring light on the consistent hiccups that are prevalent in like every Miyazaki title, and their annoyance is ramped up like crazy here since they will cause you to die at some point. But all of these blights are tolerable because winning feels awesome, the combat is fluid with punch, the world is layered with exploration, and once again, From Software smacks you over the head with that atmosphere and art direction. All in all, I can recommend this to Souls fans if you are willing to unlearn a lot of Souls-esque combat norms and are down with a more straightforward story. As for non-Souls veterans though, be ready for a steep difficulty curve, because while everything in this game is tutorialized rather well, the gameplay is incredibly punishing and the level design might be a little confusing to navigate at first. No, the game does not have a difficulty setting. It is a go big or go home kind of experience, but the satisfaction of overcoming a tough fight does make that grind worth it. Lord knows when this game dropped, the Gigabrain video essays were sounding off, because every time a title like this comes out, everyone feels the need to over-explain how personal satisfaction and dopamine works. So yeah, just know that the game might require some intense concentration if you are serious about winning. Moving on though, From Software's storytelling has upgraded from vague to followable in this one because characters actually bother to explain what's going on. The game takes place during the Sengoku period in Japan, you know, the middle-aged point in history where all the Japanese warlords are popping off and having a grand old time. But the story follows a shinobi named Wolf, aka Sekiro, and he's ordered by his big beard dad to protect a young divine heir named Kuro, who holds the power of resurrection and immortality, which, as you can imagine, kind of a big deal. Now, Sekiro successfully protects Kuro for a whole 5 minutes, but then gets nerfed by the leader of the Ashina clan, Genichiro, who is desperate for Kuro's immortality power so he can save his estate from an incoming attack. Now, your journey really begins after your little accident where a lone monk gives you a helping hand, literally, and you set out to rescue Kuro from Genichiro's grasp. Sekiro then braves through the soldiers and monsters of Ashina so he can fulfill his pledge to protect Kuro. And that is really the plot if we're being blunt. I mean, From Software plots have always had pretty simple premises, but it's how they're told that adds the extra intrigue. Sekiro still has the subtle storytelling touches that give this world mystery and depth, like NPC story quests, environmental/gameplay details, and alternative endings. But even though the main plot has its own nuances, the bulk of it is flat out told to you through cutscenes and character dialogue. So it's a basic ninja story with mystical mumbo-jumbo thrown in with great production value. A notable thing though is that Wolf is not a silent protagonist, but it feels like he easily could have been considering the guy has no personality. He is an absolute brick of a man. Dull responses, grunts, no signs of fear or ambition. He is a one-track lad, which is serviceable for the plot considering everybody else is interesting and their motivations is what move things along, but Sekiro as a character is not why you'll stay engaged. It is literally everything else. So let's move on to everything else. The thing that normally sucks you into a From Software title the most is the world design. This is a semi-open world adventure with snowy cliffs, remote villages, castle fortresses, hidden valleys, temples, caves, and whatever else you could associate with the Sengoku period. But you'll gradually progress through Ashina by exploring and defeating the bosses blocking your path. Now the areas are very open with tons of verticality brutality, so you'll feel like a slick ninja getting around while having lots of nooks and crannies to explore and to come back to. Y'all Souls veterans are gonna feel right at home since you still got the normal checkpoint system with shrines, the way forward is unclear, and it's got a bunch of contrived hidden secrets. I really do love how much more broad the level design is though, and how the world gradually changes from morning to night as you defeat the main bosses. But this isn't the most coherent world I've seen, since some areas are separated from each other with clever loading hallways and the like, but nothing feels out of place to the point it breaks immersion, and the level variety makes you curious for what's around the corner. So, throwing confetti at the screen, I love exploring this world. It's so cool, oh man, oh wow. But where Sekiro really comes into its own is the gameplay. Forget everything you know about Soulsborne crap, dump it. Burn it, rise from the ashes, and give your mind a clean slate. This is a ninja game where you do ninja things, meaning you can jump, sneak, swim, climb walls, and use a slingshot to get around. You have a lot of movement freedom in this title, most of which is super snappy and fun and complements the expanded level layout. A big thing to note though is that despite From Software being famous for their RPGs, this is not an RPG. This is an action title with character progression with some unique touches, meaning instead of creating a build with different stats and weapons, there are skill trees to unlock, power-ups to collect, and doodads to upgrade. But you will be using the same sword throughout the whole game, and you have to block and parry your way to victory. So enemies have a health and posture meter, and if you manage to get their health down by smacking them and or break their posture by blocking their attacks, you win. The dev team aimed to create gameplay that felt like warriors dramatically clashing swords all the time, so that's how you gotta play. You'll be blocking attacks as often as you'll be dishing them, but you can't block everything since perilous attacks are meant to be parried. But depending on the enemy's attack wind-up, be it a thrust, spin, or a grab, requires a different button and timing. This is where it gets rough. The combat could easily be described as a razor-sharp rhythm game, since the enemies all have different-looking wind-up animations, remembering buttons is scary, and timing really is key. It is incredibly obvious the combat is best served for 1v1 fights though, cause anytime there are multiple enemies aggroed, it is an absolute panic mess. You'll get kicked around like the world's densest hacky sack, and it is very, very not fun. But luckily, the game has a big stealth focus that allows you to do these slick one-hit kill takedowns if you catch folks by surprise. So sneaking is a big part of the ninja career, and this allows you to wean down groups silently if you get the jump on them, and it can even be used on most bosses to shave off whole phases. So serve up that cheese, I will eat that stuff up. I love this mechanic. I also love that this game doesn't give a f about how prosthetics work, because your arm can get all of these neat attachments that help you in combat, like firecrackers that stun dudes, a blowtorch, and a big umbrella shield to name a few. This just adds some extra customization to the combat, so there is some variety in the gameplay tactics, and you still have some of these Souls familiarities that add to that as well, like equipable items, status ailments, and consumables. And as mentioned already, the game is rather tutorialized, taking the time to explain most if not all of the mechanics. But Sekiro is hard because there ain't much room for error, and stuff hits like a truck. A lot of the challenge can be chalked up to the unfamiliarity of the enemy attack patterns. It's hard to judge what kind of parry you should use until it's too late, especially when some of these animations are meant to psych you out. So if you're bad at memorizing enemy movesets or don't have the patience to learn them through failure, then this is where you'll struggle, and the game will be immensely unfun. But the real teeth grinders are the long-time FromSoft issues I mentioned, because certain attacks look and feel terrible to die to, because sometimes you'll just teleport into insta-kill attacks even though you clearly dodged. The camera will inevitably get stuck on walls, the collision occasionally gets confused, and the enemy AI can get stuck on loops. At the end of the day, I really did love this combat system once I got into the groove, but these technical oversights, even if they are infrequent, have been authentic challenge killers since Demon Souls, and they feel extra painful in this game. And oh god, Sekiro has some real stinkers for bosses. Don't get me wrong, most of them are super cool and creative, and they get all my love and affection for their little surprises. But, and you can quote me on this, I think the Headless are one of the worst enemies I have ever fought in any From Software title, and the fact that they are the most reused mini-boss in this game is perplexing. Like, I get there's a lore reason for the number, but if you're gonna repeat something, make it an enemy that's fun to fight, cause the Headless are not that. They make me sad, and I hate them. I am eternally grateful that the Headless aren't mandatory though, because, ugly. Also, I'm putting this on the record too. Terror sucks! That's it. That's my amazing insight. That's all I got. I don't like it. like at all. So there are definitely a few places the gameplay and enemy design could have used some refinement, but it does make you feel like a badass ninja, and nothing beats that adrenaline rush when you do win. But at the end of the day, it's block and parry or die. Unless... Yeah, so the game has a resurrection mechanic. Also, if you died too much, the NPCs can get sick and drop dead. That's always fun, but it's part of the story in a way, so hooray for the gameplay informing narrative. My failures have consequences, what else is new? But upon death, you get the option to resurrect with some health until you die again for good and are sent back to the checkpoint. Considering the high difficulty, this is a literal life and frustration saver, so I'm happy it's here. Big fan, cause Lord knows I used it a lot. Side tangent though. Hi, From Software. This is for your patch team. How do you, how do? Why is it that every time I pick up an item, it gives me the long item description with the pause and everything? Like, this makes sense to have if it's a brand new item because it highlights its importance. Ooh, yeah, I should probably be reading this. But this happens with every item you loot. One of my pettiest segments, I know. But on top of this being repetitive, it's extra annoying because when you pillage enemies for items with the suck sweater, it gives you a quick pickup notification on the side. You have a system in place for this. So why do you want me to read about the ceramic pieces every time? Was this an oversight? Or is it for the immersion? Please patch, I am begging. Okay, that's it, I'm done. But I can't dissect every little mechanic this game has, since Sekiro is full of them, so let's move on to the superficial. From the people that brought you mouth nightmare fuel and the rotting corpse frat party, Sekiro brings back that trademark horrific touch to Ashina. Centipede stands rejoice, this is your time to shine. Cause while this is a historically inspired world, Sekiro is full of weird monsters, twisted humanoids, and mythical creatures. And despite all the gore and misery, this is a gorgeous looking game. Not because of the graphical might, like cutscenes or facial animations, but because of the art direction, the landscape/architectural detail, and the vibrant lighting just make this world so absorbing. I mean, FromSoft has been using this engine since the start of the console gen, and what can I say, they've gotten pretty good at making it look real good. But what ties everything together is the sound design. Can't say the OST stands out too much though, since it's mainly dramatic period piece tracks, but all of the diegetic sounds got punch. Swords clanging, enemies wailing, weapons impaling, lightning flailing. Music to my ears. The impact sound effects really make the combat as satisfying as it is though, and even if the block sound effects puts holes in my brain from the repetition, I'll never get sick of that death blow one.
I can't believe you've done this.
Anyway, Sekiro is a tough game to nail down for me, cause on one side, I think it's an amazing looking action title with a unique combat system and fun exploration, but I also felt burned out after each boss since the trial by fire pattern learning was incredibly painful my first playthrough. To be honest, I got most of my enjoyment from replaying the thing since my muscle memory had already been worked out, but besides doing it for my pride, comparatively, this is some of the lowest replay value for a From Software title. While there are alternative endings with different bosses that are decent enough, other than that, nothing really changes minus some gameplay tweaks, and because the combat only allows for so much variety, there aren't huge fresh incentives to replay this sucker. Gosh, I wish this got DLC though. I'm sure they could have come up with something really neat since all of the past games' DLC has been pretty poggers, but because From Software's real blockbuster is Elden Ring, and this was, from what it seems, the side project, DLC probably ain't gonna happen. Miyazaki's busy not showing us his super cool, awesome RPG. Anyway, FromSoft fan or not, I'm gonna recommend Sekiro to the try-hard, get-gooder types that have been around the block a few times, cause if patience is not your virtue, then God help you. Okay, now before we get to our last title of this video, here are some honorable mentions of 2019 games I have no personal interest in whatsoever, but I'm sure they're fine, but I don't care. Rage 2, Borderlands 3, Metro Exodus, Far Cry New Dawn, Greedfall, A Plague Tale, Anthem, and Days Gone. I will leave it up to you to figure out what those games have in common that makes me bored. But here's something that isn't boring. Now, I've always loved a good nap, but I've been kicking myself lately for sleeping on the Yakuza series for so long. I've known about it since forever, cause my Twitter's got the hots for Kiryu, but the games kept getting pushed back to the very depths of my backlog. Luckily, the timing was just right, cause I got wind of Judgment around its release, and was told it was a perfectly good entry title into the Yakuza franchise. Cause this is a Yakuza game, but you're a detective, and if you played a Yakuza game before, you know exactly what I mean. This was technically my first experience with the series, but since beating it, I've played Yakuza 0, so now I have a slightly better perspective on how Judgment stacks up comparatively. And survey says it stacks up real good, cause while this is a brand new plot and cast, Judgment has all of the energy, drama, and wackiness the series is known for, with just enough new gameplay gimmicks to differentiate itself. So, go get it, Yakuza fans. Go solve some crime. Start kicking! But if we're looking at this bad boy with fresh eyes, Judgment is a story-driven baby open-world game with beat-em-up combat, tons of side missions, and every minigame idea conceived within the last 15 years. It's dense, dramatic, packed in with weird details, and the tone is all over the place, because you can go from scenes like this to scenes like this. Within a heartbeat. This has always been the series' charm, though, so Judgment is a solid addition, and since it stands alone story-wise with some more accessible qualities, yes, I do recommend this as a great entry point. However, this ain't a 10 out of 10 Sherlock Holmes is quaking kind of experience. The narrative has quality writing, don't get me wrong, but mechanically, everything is a little shallow. Enjoyable, but shallow. There isn't one exceptional aspect that holds the whole title up. This is a game greater than the sum of its parts, and some of the parts are a little mid. But if you want a fun city to explore with a big crime underbelly to slap around, then Judgment is your game. But if the story is a big focus, then let's start zoning in on this tale. Oh my god, back it up, guys! So, the plot takes place in the fictional, but very much based on real life, modern city of Kamurocho. You play as Yagami, a disgraced lawyer turned private detective who rubs elbows with the local Yakuza on the daily and solves any case given to him because he just loves the action so dang much. But when a series of mysterious murders start occurring in the city, Yagami quickly gets involved and descends into a deep rabbit hole of crime, corruption, and punching in an attempt to uncover the actual killer and their motives. And that's the short and sweet synopsis. Mind you, though, that this is roughly a 30-hour experience, so do not expect a simple mystery. Cause while crime stories are nothing new, Judgment does an excellent job at keeping you guessing since it's filled with strong characters with real convincing motivations that constantly move the plot in interesting directions. Everyone's got a stake in this, and they act like they do. So it's a big cast with even bigger personalities, and half of the enjoyment is seeing these characters interact with each other because the performances and chemistry are magnetic. And shout out to my man's Kaito for being the model boyfriend I won't ever have. Now, I'll admit, it can be difficult to keep track of all the major players sometimes, but the game does a decent job of reiterating important information while pacing out the introductions and reveals so each story chapter feels like something is happening. Although, as balanced as the main plot is with drama and action, occasionally you'll get sidetracked with a mandatory story mission that ultimately has little to do with the main investigation, which can drag on, even if they are hype as On top of that, because the tone can shift on a whim, it takes away from the weight of the plot a bit since it's rare that you feel certain characters are actually in danger, especially Yagami. We're talking coolest man in the world levels of untouchable here. He's a straight shooter, smart, articulate, charming, witty, principled, Olympic runner, will save your cat from a tree, eats bullets for breakfast, could single-handedly take out the US Army. Yagami. Mind you, this doesn't shatter all the tension. There is still a massive foot soldered in reality, but it is more interesting to see how Yagami handles the situation rather than how the situation affects him. Cause he's just so dang slick there isn't much to get attached to, you feel. But there's still plenty else to care about since on top of the main story's dynamic cast, there is a massive amount of side missions where you get involved with the local residents and their little shenanigans. Disgusting! These little adventures are never dull, and they help make Kamurocho feel like a vibrant, bustling, lived-in place. Overall, the plot doesn't disappoint cause even though it feels a bit padded out, there is a strong build-up to a grand climax where the destination feels earned, and the big questions get answered. It's a case closed, job well done kind of tale, and I may have even shed a few tears along the way. So, being an open-world game, the story progresses by completing missions you initiate throughout the city, where you get locked into a series of events until you're free to roam around again and do whatever. Now, I hope you're ready to hear this is like Yakuza, but a little different a few more times, cause yes, Kamurocho is nothing new. This is the same city from previous games with a sleek modern touch, but it's not the biggest map. However, it is densely packed with stuff to do and people to see. From stores, restaurants, arcades, and a cornucopia of traffic cones, the place be boppin', and you can explore everything at your own pace. And Yagami even has an office that he lives in citizens, so you even have a home base you can call your own. Now, the main story missions will have you running around doing the detective do, and occasionally you'll even leave the city for some events, but most of the time you'll be investigating crime scenes, interrogating witnesses, trailing suspects, and kicking the absolute living shit out of middle-aged men. A love it or hate it aspect of this game, though, and the whole series for that matter, is the fact that stuff is a little hand-holdy. Personally, I'm more on the love it end since I'm needy, but you'll always be told where to go, what to do, how to do it, and it's borderline impossible to mess up. It's a detective game with little actual hard-thinking detective work. Answers are obvious, directions are clear, and everything falls into place for you. Until it doesn't, cause every now and then, the guiding hand of instructions will let Jesus take the wheel, and you'll just get a vague description on how to continue the plot. This is pretty infrequent though, but it is jarring when the game suddenly expects me to use my brain when I've been on cruise control 90% of the time. But the open world design isn't that special, and neither is the gameplay, really. But it is fun, alright? Don't be mistaken. Think quantity over quality. Investigating crime scenes just requires you to examine areas and squint at items until all the boxes are checked off. Interrogating witnesses is as simple as exhausting all the dialogue options. Chasing down subjects is just a big quick-time event hallway, and tailing people of interest is only a matter of keeping them in your line of sight without being seen. None of these are bad, though. At worst, they're tedious, at best, they're enjoyable, and at most, they are basic. The deepest mechanic, though, is the beat-em-up combat, where you kung fu kick your way out of every altercation. So, let's say it all together now. If you've played a Yakuza game, then the combat will be incredibly familiar. Now, Yagami only has two fighting styles. The blue is better for groups, while the red is best suited for 1v1s. Fights are all about stringing together combos, dodging incoming attacks, and using the environment to your advantage, such as throwing bicycles at heads. You can also do these special damage moves that initiate some flashy ass-kicking sequence that no normal person would actually survive. And you get a boost mode that allows you to go Super Saiyan for a short period of time. And since Yagami's got legs that would make Bayonetta jealous, Homeboy can even parkour kick off of walls, so you never have to worry about being cornered. The gameplay gradually expands as you play, too, since you can unlock new moves and power-ups with experience points. But the fights aren't the smoothest things in the world. There is some noticeable jankiness, and often you'll be fighting multiple dudes in a cramped space, and the enemy AI is, well, it's more of an AF, if anything. Artificially functional. You can easily button mash your way through most fights and abuse cheesy tactics. Like seriously, I went to the final boss with no healing items, got desperate at low health, and ended up spamming the super drunk takedown move until I won, cause all I had was a bunch of sake. So the balance is a bit flimsy on normal, to say the least, but it's still fun. There is a special type of cathartic energy from leg-whipping hunky boys around all day, and you never really get tired of seeing the same takedowns. Noted, the disconnect between what happens in gameplay versus what happens in cutscenes takes reality to do donuts in the parking lot, cause, yeah, it is a little jarring to be able to tank bullets with sushi platters in combat, but getting shot in a cutscene suddenly makes you dead. I've always rationalized this with the idea that in this game's universe, people have power levels that give them superhuman strength and resilience as long as they feelin' hype as f***. Ergo, the colored flames means it's on. But if you're feeling unhype, then you can die like any old person. Like, this is just an average aspect of society that no one's bothered to acknowledge since it's been around since the beginning of time. Might be overthinking this a bit, who knows? But yeah, the combat and plot are pretty disjointed. However, this is video game. The gameplay is free to be more fun and creative if it's not bound to the story's realism, so toss me that sauce, Chief, let's get it! But those are just the core gameplay essentials. There's still a flood of tinier things, like lockpicking, flying a drone, wearing disguises, collecting items, and the quaint but odd mechanic of picking the right key to open a certain door. Thanks, I guess. Not to mention every optional minigame floating around, which I won't list cause oi, and the massive amount of locals you can befriend for special rewards. I too like Persona 4. So, needless to say, Judgment gets my award for, most. Just most. An observation, though, I do like that this game took the time to curb its inflation. Yakuza 0 taught me that money doesn't grow on trees, it grows in men's underwear. But cash and Judgment can get pretty tight sometimes, and since your health gets knocked down in big chunks and the average healing items are a little pricey, eating out at restaurants is the most cost-effective way to keep your health up. So this does add to that lived-in feeling I mentioned before. Yagami takes a lunch break like everybody else so he can keep curb-stomping faces in. just your average Tuesday. So I can't say I'm enthralled with the kiddie pool level of gameplay depth, but Judgment definitely got variety that keeps my attention. And so does Yagami's jeans. Like, good God, I cannot look away. The hell is going on down there? Okay, so let's talk visuals. The game is pretty, and like the gameplay, it varies. There is an exceptional amount of detail in the environments, because the dev team took a lot of direct references from real Japanese cities, and the character models all pop with their unique looks. So A+ in that department. Except for Yagami's ass-crack jeans, these things are honestly distracting. Now the cutscene quality is a little all over the place though, because while most of the story missions are these long cinematics with outstanding cinematography and choreography that will keep you on the edge of your seat, other basic dialogue scenes are flat and feel a bit lazy. If anything, the quality low-key indicates the importance of the moment, so at least you know the budget had good priorities. I can't fault the game too hard for this though. Everything looks crisp and the aesthetic is really modern and sleek, so in the end, it's still a good-looking title. The sound went the extra mile though, since this is the first Yakuza title to get an English dub, and it's real solid. I've always favored dubs because Lord knows my dyslexia makes subtitles feel like my brain is melting, so consider me impressed. My bar isn't high at all, but impressed nonetheless. The performances are great and match up super well with the characters' personalities, so I can't complain. The OST is also packed with variety. From jazzy detective tunes to full-on bangers, the tracks single-handedly set the mood every time. So to wrap it all up, Judgment is a very rememberable experience, and despite not everything meshing well together, the fast-paced action and charismatic cast makes the mystery that much more enjoyable. Personally, I enjoyed Yakuza 0 a little more than this narrative-wise, but it does succeed as a great spin-off, and I'm glad the dev team took some creative liberties because the franchise isn't reliant on one gameplay loop or plot. What makes these games special is the attitude and energy that's incorporated in like every aspect. So if you're ready to get funky with the crime boys in a town that never sleeps, then look no further than Yagami's glutes. And just like that, we are coming to a close. Take a deep breath, y'all, you made it this far. 2019 can officially go down in my book as one of the better years for games in the last decade. I mean, the end of the console generation is normally when the creme de la creme comes popping out anyway, and it looks like 2020 is just gonna continue that trend until the new game boxes are released and we enter those awkward growing pain years again. But there are still a few more 2019 titles I want to give my 2 cents on in the future. But until then, catch up on your backlog, cause it's probably just as bad as mine. Yo, you giddy yo, welcome to the end of the video. Video games, am I right, guys? But seriously, thank you all so much for sticking to the end, and an even bigger thank you to my amazing, patient, lovely Patreons. Without you guys, I would not be able to take the time I need to make these longer videos, and y'all really make all this stuff possible, so thank you so very much. And this episode's Patreon shoutouts go to French Fry, Vexatol24, and Momo. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel, and don't forget to party hard. But if you like what I do, you like what you see, you want to see more of it, please consider checking out the links down below. I have a Twitter that I never shut up on, I have a Twitch that I stream on regularly, and I also have a side channel where a lot of my long-form gameplay stuff goes. And of course the Patreon and the merch shop, you know, just click the button, look at it for yourself. You can read, I believe in you, go ahead, do it, please. For me. Seriously, check out the side channel. A lot of people don't know that exists. So yeah, we're gonna end it here. I am very tired. Thank y'all so much. Video's done. Bye-bye, y'all. Bye-bye.